I'm joined by my friend Ricky. I'm not even going to try to say your last name. How do you pronounce that?
It is Tabruggy.
Tebruggi. Okay, that's what I thought it was, but I didn't want to be so bold to just try to do it. So Ricky, you said you've been an advocate. Well, first of all, you're the founding and member and creator of Kansas Missing and Unsolved, and
Yeah, yeah.
you became an advocate in 2012. Started the page, and an advocate in 2011. Started the page in 2012. What made
Right.
you become an advocate in 2011?
I was actually approached by a couple other missing persons pages that asked me if I would like to help them out with their pages after I had been sharing other people's flyers on my timeline and things like that. They came to me and said, "Hey, would you like to help us with our page?" And yeah, sure. So I did. So I did. I did. I started out with one group, which where I learned how to make flyers, and then started with another group and continued making flyers, and then I started doing Kansas Missing Unsolved after my brother kind of planted the seed. He was talking. He does a Facebook group called Salina Scoop for our hometown, and he was talking about doing like a Salina Missing and Unsolved type thing. And I was like, well, why stop with Salina? Let's do the whole state. So I started researching and looking at other websites and seeing what all they had, and research news sites and seeing what they had, and I just started pulling it all together, and Kansas Missing and Unsolved was born.
Did you have like a personal like connection? Like, did you know somebody that had gone missing, or was this just you just had like a curiosity about finding missing people?
Well, what got me, I guess, started was there was a woman here in Salina that went missing named Catherine Adam. She was a legs pantyhose distributor back in 1993, and she had gone missing, and subsequently her case has shifted from missing persons to a homicide due to evidence that it had been uncovered. But that case is what kind of got my attention with missing persons and unsolved crimes and things like that, and
Do
it just
you
kind of grew from
do you
there.
feel like has law enforcement ever reached out to you and given you any accolades or given you any pointers, or have they just kept their distance from you?
I actually have had law enforcement reach out to me and ask, hey, can you do a flyer for this person or that person or this kid? And I'm like, yeah, I'll do it.
You got a lot of followers on there. I
Oh
noticed.
yeah, yeah.
So like, let me ask you this: like, do you have like a rough estimate of how many people that are currently missing in Kansas?
Um, well, KBI just started a missing persons database on their website, and I'm not sure exact how it is, but they have over 200 juveniles missing and over 200 adults missing right now on there. So right around 500 probably overall.
Okay, and like, so you're dealing with a lot of these and posting a lot of these flyers. Um, a lot of times, I've just in my personal life, I see people on my timeline on Facebook. Some of their kids will go missing for 2 or 3 days, and and they'll make a flyer. They get scared and stuff. And 9 times out of 10, they like went on a camping trip they forgot to tell everybody about. Do
Mm.
you see that a lot with your page, like where people are being found and they might not have necessarily been missing, just sort of out on their own doing stuff, or?
Not a lot. Most of what I've been dealing with is legitimate. I hate to use the term, but runaways. A lot of them are runaways from either from home, from foster care. Um, on the juvenile end of it, the adults, law enforcement says, well, they're an adult. They can be missing if they want. They can drop off the grid if they want, which I don't necessarily like because there's been times when I've even seen adults found deceased, which is I don't like, but it's part of the deal. I mean, unfortunately.
Do you know how much manpower is allotted by the state of Kansas in looking for these people? Because it doesn't. I mean, I don't think that they have like several agents like out on the town every day looking for each individual person. There's no way.
That I don't know. I know with as many as there are, it would take a lot of manpower, and I know they don't obviously have that. They're always talking about shortages in this department or that department. So I know they do the best they can, but I know a lot of people don't think it's nearly enough. But in talking to some of the law enforcement agents that I've talked to around the state in the last 8 years, I know a lot of them work really hard.
Yeah. So let me ask you this: like, what is your overall goal with the page? Like, just to spread awareness and get these pictures out where people can see them? Or?
Yeah, it's just mainly to help bring missing people home. That's the goal. Hopefully, bring them home safe, but ultimately that doesn't always happen, and it's sad when it doesn't happen. And there are several cases here in Kansas that have been where they've been missing for literally decades that I don't know if they'll ever have a resolution. I hope someday they do, but I don't know.
Yeah. So I noticed that you have a couple pages. The other one is you deal with unsolved homicides.
Yeah.
Um, how in depth do you get with that? Like, are you doing like investigating on your own, or are you just putting out a lot of content and hoping people come with you to you with information? Or
I mainly use what I find on the internet, but I have had families come to me and say, I've had a loved one that was murdered. Can you help us out? Get us a flyer made that we can start getting awareness going again on this case. And I do. I don't say no to anybody.
yeah. Let me ask you this: like, what has your success rate been like in doing that? Because I've been investigating a couple of murders in my hometown for about 3 years, and it's really hard to get anybody to talk on record,
Right.
out of fear of retaliation. Do you have any of that anxiety with you poking around publicly? So, people know exactly who's poking around and kicking up dust about old violent crimes. There's people out there that have gotten away with stuff that they might want to keep it quiet.
I've thought about that. I've actually given some thought to that, and it is a concern, but I don't think about it too much. A lot of these cases are really, really old, and there are some newer ones, but it's not something I think about on a daily basis. I think about it in terms of, when my kids are with me and stuff, hopefully, nothing does happen, but I worry about their safety and stuff too. I have to.
When you're sitting here thumbing through all these pictures every day, does
Mm-hmm.
it make you more hyper aware as a parent, like to keep it close? Because I've lost my kid before for 3 or 4 minutes, and it was the scariest. It was just in a big crowd at a playground. He took off running, and I lost him. And I live in Phoenix, Arizona, which is, they say like a really big kidnapping city in America and stuff. Does you feel like it makes you more hyper aware of that people do end up missing a lot?
Yeah, it does. One of my daughters actually had gone missing. They were up here visiting me. I'm a divorced dad. They were up here with me on an afternoon visit, and my older daughter disappeared, didn't know where she had gone to. So I called the police department, and they knew who I was and what I did. And they said, well, get us a flyer made, email it to us, we'll get it going. And I called my ex-wife and I said, hey, our older daughter's missing, don't know where she's at. And she come up, and she brought the troops with her, and we all started looking for her. And eventually she surfaced. She'd just gone to a friend's house, didn't bother to tell anybody. But it was, I tell you, when we found her and we got her back in here and started talking to her, I literally leaned up against the wall in the hallway out there, and I started crying. I was like, don't ever do that again, please.
Yeah.
You don't know how scary that is.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, because you're dealing with it every day. Most
Yeah.
people, you fear about that stuff a little bit because it happens. You do know you see missing kids,
Oh,
missing
yeah.
people. Let me ask you
Yeah.
this: like with the missing adult stuff, like do you tend to generally believe it's foul play, or do you feel like people are just taking vacations away from their loved ones and just getting away for a while?
I've noticed a lot of more recent ones where the adults have gone missing, where depression's involved, and because of that, it takes on a little bit more serious undertone to get them found quickly before they do act on that depression. And I really pray they don't. I mean, depression's a serious thing. My younger daughter's actually dealing with some depression and stuff right now that we're trying to help her through.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been following this case out of Nebraska. This woman's been missing for about 3 months now, and I can't decide whether because she was at a hospital, they said, and she wasn't feeling well, and then they dismissed her from the hospital, and nobody's seen her since then. But she's like an adult woman,
Yeah.
so like I just don't know. I'm scared for her, obviously, even if she's not quote unquote missing in her eyes. It's still she's still out there, alone without friends or family, knowing where she is, and that's the state of missing in
Yeah.
itself. How close do you get to these cases and stuff? Is this just like, are they just people on flyers, or do you like read about them, get to know them, talk to their families, and
I do talk to
involve
a
your
lot of
heart?
families. I do a lot of talking to a lot of families that have reached out to me and stuff, and I get a sense of their anxiety and their fear of not knowing where their loved ones are, and I sympathize with that. And, I let them know that I do genuinely care about them. If I didn't genuinely care, I shouldn't be doing this page.
Yeah.
You know.
Does that ever? I mean, does that affect your mental health though? I mean, you're dealing with bad news most of the time when you're doing these kind of projects. Like, hate to like, point out like a bad thing, but a lot of these times, like, you don't find these people.
Yeah, it does weigh on me sometimes, but at the same time, my faith keeps me strong. I always say God's got my back on it. He keeps me going forward, and He doesn't want me to get weighed down. I do have my down times when it's like, man, this is getting heavy, but
Yeah.
and that's when I try to take a break from it a little bit, not much, but a little bit, and spend time with my kids and do things with them to help me kind of get through things too. And I do talk to God a lot about it.
Do you have a career that's like outside of this that has like anything to do with this type of work? Like, what type of work do you do aside from this?
And I work retail actually.
Oh, works retail. Okay.
Yeah, I've worked retail. I was working in one place. I was working at a Sears store here in town. I worked there for almost 22 years, and I'm working at a home improvement store now.
Nice. Have you ever thought about going into law enforcement of any type?
No, I think my age would prevent it now. I'm almost 53, so I don't know if I
Uh,
could now or not.
you just sort of the net sleuth. Let me ask you this: like,
Yeah.
how difficult is it for you to find these news articles when these cases are from these little small towns? Like, there's like hardly anything online.
Yeah, it's hard. A lot of times I just go with what I find on, like there's a website called charlieproject.org. She is really, really phenomenal on that website about digging up facts. So I use her as a source a lot. KBI doesn't give you much except for the basics as far as when and where and stuff like that they're missing from, and the age and height and weight and things like that. But they don't go into detail, and they barely have pictures of the missing person on KBI, which I hope they improve upon later on.
What
But
do you
it's
feel
hard.
about that 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 red tape that they have? Because I've dealt with that too. Like, I've learned in talking to a lot of friends and family of the cases I've been working with.
Mm,
You learn a lot of facts that the KBI are telling people whenever they're doing their investigation, and some of it's some pretty wild stuff. Like
mm,
that you're just like, wow, the KBI told you that, and like certain things that I've heard from three or four sources that the KBI told them.
really?
But you can't really take that as fact because you never know if they were just using some sort of detective tactic to try to, putting false information out to the person to see if they could trip them up in their story, something like that. But
Yeah.
I always, what are your thoughts on like on law enforcement, like not giving out any details and stuff like this? Because it could really help move the cases along if there were certain, especially some of these cases
Hmm.
that are over 20 years old.
Yeah, that I wish, I heard it, I think I heard a red investigator one time say that in order to get information, you got to put out information. So I feel like that surely there's got to be something that they can release that wouldn't jeopardize anything that may not be known. Like we have, it was a lady that was murdered here in town. It was back, I think in the early 80s, I think it was. And the only evidence they found of the killer was a Zippo lighter. But they've never released any kind of pictures or descriptions of it. And I thought, well, maybe if it was a Zippo that was a unique design of some sort, maybe somebody would recognize that. Or, if it was just a plain chrome one, is there any kind of initials or name engraved on it that might trigger somebody's memory or something? But I mean, they've never said anything about it. I mean, they stay pretty tight-lipped on the cases around here.
Do you feel like not in a, because obviously you don't want to be disrespectful, but in a morbid sense, like, is this kind of a fun hobby for you? Like being involved in this world and trying to, you're obviously trying to better the world by helping people locate who they're looking for. Do you feel like this is a good calling for you and you enjoy the work?
I feel like that it's something that God's led me to do and wants me to do, and I've made a lot of connections doing it, and I've often said I'm going to keep doing it until either my services aren't needed or until God calls me home, whichever comes first.
So typically, how does it go? Who contacts you first, police or families?
Usually family,
Okay.
usually families do.
And that's all just word of mouth. Your site is
Yeah,
kicking butt, man. 57,000 people, I think.
yeah, I'm coming up on 60,000 likes and almost 60,000 followers, I think.
What is your relationship like with the people that interact with your page?
For the most part, it's been really positive. I've had a few negatives that I've had to block out and ban them from the page because they just gotten too negative, and So it's, and usually it's like I did a flyer for a juvenile at one time that they were ripping me up one side down there. They were saying this kid wasn't missing. It was where they needed to be, and just ripping me and the page up one side down the other. And I started blocking people because they were just being too derogatory toward me and my staff on my page. And it's just like, I'm not going to deal with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Internet's a terrible place sometimes,
Yeah,
man.
it can
They
be.
show up. Yeah. So, what are some like big ones right now that you guys are working on that are fresh in the,
One of the ones that's one of the more recent ones was an older gentleman who lived in town. I remember him from my teen years, seeing him at the gas stations playing pinball and stuff. But he's been missing since last November, and his bank accounts haven't been touched or anything. He's mentally disabled and he has a payee, but his money hasn't been touched since November, and nobody knows where he went or anything like that. It's possible that he might have tried to go to Colby, where he might have family. I was told that he was evicted from his apartment over on Elm Street and was taken out to a homeless shelter here in town. I haven't been able to confirm that just by what people have told me, but nobody knows where he's gone from there. They said they've seen all of his stuff out in the yard of his former apartment. So I don't know.
do you know
I hope
much
he's
about
okay
the
wherever he's at.
aftermath? You know much about the aftermath of these things? Like, whenever, say, you do find these people that didn't want to be found, like, do they generally stick around, or are they back on your website in a few weeks?
I don't know. I know that as far as the juveniles go, that run some of them. I just put one up today for a young man that this would be his third flyer I've done for him.
Okay.
There's been others I've done 4, 5, 6. Because they just keep running and running and running.
Yeah. That's crazy, man. Well, I'm glad we've crossed paths and stuff. Like I said, I'm working on a project of my own. Um, I don't know, man. Like, I've gone pretty deep with some of this stuff, and I've learned
Yeah.
a lot of stuff, and I'm sitting on like a couple episodes of a podcast I'm working on about murders in my hometown, but like I just can't make myself post it because like of that question I asked you earlier. Like, it's
Yeah.
going to kick up dust. It's
Yeah.
going to anger some people. It could even potentially, because some people are naming names and stuff, and it could potentially end up in like a lawsuit. People saying I
Right.
defame their name and stuff. So it's
Yeah.
like a tricky thing to be a part of.
Yeah, it is. It is. I did have a. This was actually one that turned out positive. I had a gentleman message me one day, and he said, "I found one of the kids on one of your flyers," and that's all he said. And I was like, "Okay." So I think it was like the next day or day after, he messaged me again, and he sent me a picture of himself with the kid holding the flyer up. He found him sleeping on the steps of a church in Los Angeles. And he'd been cited by LAPD a couple of times for vagrancy for sleeping on the church steps. They didn't bother to do a background to see he was missing out of Kansas. But long story short, he made it back home to his family. This guy helped him get back home and to his family. And last I heard, he was in the Army now. So
Nice, nice.
yeah,
Yeah, it's always good to hear the positive stories.
yeah.
Pamela DeLuz says, "What do you think about law enforcement not making peers talk when they know another juvenile's whereabouts?"
I That's a good question. Actually, I think they should be told if you have information on this person's whereabouts, that they should be told they could be cited for obstruction of an investigation, if any, if nothing else, because if they know something, they should say something. I know that does happen, but I think they should say something if they know something.
Nick Van Castelli says, "How do you deal with the urge to retaliate when it's kids being mistreated?"
I've never really heard of any personal cases of any kids being mistreated yet. I've had some of the runaways I've done flyers for actually message and comment and say, well, I'm running away from a bad situation, but
Yeah,
I don't know the history behind it. I don't know if they're just saying that to justify them running, or if that's legitimately the case. I think if it is the case, it needs to be looked into to see what's
yeah.
going on.
Pamela also says, "Thank you for doing my son's flyer, Giovanni Ross. He's been a runaway since 2/4/20. I believe he's in Wichita. Thank you for all you do."
Yeah, you're welcome, Pamela. I'm hoping we can get this kid found. I'm gonna have to bump his flyer back up to the top of the page because it's got kind of bumped down a little bit, but I'll get it bumped back up to the top, and I'm gonna add another picture to it that I just latched onto today too from National Center for Missing and Exploited Children's website. So I'll add that onto the flyer and get it reposted.
Cassie Wisnano says Jay Halford. Now that's another one from my hometown in Elkhart. I tell you what, man, like if you're ever just looking for something to do, Paul Harvey once said on the air that if you want to get away with murder, go to Elkhart, Kansas, or he said Morton County,
Oh yeah,
Kansas.
I never heard that.
There's several. I think that there's 5 unsolved murders in Elkhart's history, and maybe like 7
Wow.
murders. But there's more that, like, I just learned about a murder from the 50s
Hmm.
that nobody had ever said anything about, and then I found this guy's death certificate on the internet.
Really?
And yeah, he had been killed by these 2 guys in Elkhart, and
Hmm.
they're the ones that took him to the hospital. And then in Elkhart, it's just something with the law enforcement there, the small town law enforcement. They've never been able to get the job done as far as prosecuting and getting these dangerous people off the streets. But they spent 2 weeks in county jail, from what I've researched, and
Yeah.
they ended up getting out and doing a violent crime to an elderly person in Boise City, Oklahoma, like a few weeks
Oh,
later.
wow.
So, like Elkhart, that's the reason I've always been sort of captivated with my hometown. I just don't understand how, like so many murders can happen and there's just no arrests. There's nothing,
Right. Right. And I
I
think
don't
if
know.
it's a small town and they're feeling overwhelmed in these cases, not sure what to do, they should reach out to like KBI or a neighboring county or something. Say, hey, we don't have the experience or resources to do this. Can you help us out?
What do you say to people that are inspired by what you do and wanna join the fight? Start their own page or just hit you up for some
Um,
instructions?
if they've got questions on how to get started, I'll be glad to answer them. Basically, my biggest thing is to start off is just every time you run across missing persons flyers, share them and share them and share them. I have noticed, and I've commented on quite a few links on my newsfeed where people have been located, but the stories are still continuing to circulate. And I have to comment, hey, this person was located safe. This person was located, safe. This one wasn't located safe. But and, I think it's important to get those links down as soon as they're found, so they don't keep recirculating and they keep getting rehashed. I try to keep my pages updated as I can. I have a great helper, Steph Sheets. She's a big help to me. She helps try to keep flyers updated and monitored and comments monitored and things like that, and lets me know what's going on when I'm at work and stuff, because I'm usually working 40 to 45 hours a week. So I try to do this stuff before I go to work. When I get home from work, I check in on messages and stuff while I'm at work on my breaks. But yeah, she's a big help to me. She's been with me for about, let's see, we've been going almost 8 years, about 7 years she's been with me now.
I just had a great question. Somebody in the chat said something. Uh, what was I gonna say? It was a great question, Ricky. I promise.
Uh-oh.
Oh no, it's
Uh-oh.
gone. It's gone.
Oh
Samantha Sanger says KBI came to Elkhart whenever her uncle was murdered. Yeah, like I said,
That's good.
there's a lot of that. Dang it, I really wish I would have wrote that question down because it was a good one.
Oh wow.
It was a really good one. Oh no, I was okay. So I got it. So how much were you? Well, I'm sure you were following it more than anybody in Kansas. A couple years back, the little boy that was missing, and then they ended up finding his body and charging his mom with murder. Uh, were you
I think that was
covering?
Lucas Hernandez. I believe
Yeah,
that was him.
Lucas Hernandez. Yeah.
Yeah.
So how early on the case did you hop onto that and sort of spreading the word about him, and how much did your page get engulfed with that story?
I think I was. I think I pretty much got his flyer going out right from the onset, and I think I might have added a picture or two to it and reposted it. But I stayed on it the whole time until he was found and stuff. And I was trying to think of the other one. There was Lucas Hernandez, and then there was another little boy before that went missing, and they found him encased in uh, that concrete structure in the basement. I'm trying to think of what his name was now. I can't think of it now. But I was pretty much on that one on the onset too. And I
Did you
think
have
his
did you have
mom or
at
boyfriend.
what point did you, like with Lucas, at what point, like, and maybe you don't want to be honest about this, you have a public image, but at what point did you start smelling foul play within his own family? Because I kind of felt it right away. Just
Honestly, I wasn't for sure on that one. I mean, it took a little bit to start going down that path. I think it wasn't until they started looking at the mom closer and stuff, and there was some. I think they started raising some conflicts in her stories and stuff like that. I think is when I started suspecting it a little bit.
Did you have
That was
any interaction with his family?
honestly, I don't remember.
Okay.
I don't remember. I might have, but I don't honestly remember.
Okay.
I,
So yeah,
I've done so many I can't
yeah,
remember.
yeah, yeah. It's sad that you have to do all that stuff. They would say,
Mhm.
what do you think about sharing missing person posts from social media? If they're not an official agency, the concern is it might be someone trying to find someone they aren't allowed to contact, like
Mhm.
non-custodial parents trying to track down a child they aren't supposed to see. So, what do you think about that?
Well, I always reach out to whoever's posting the post to see, get information from them to see, on whether, it's a legit or not, and whether or not that I need to get a flyer made or not. And now with like I said, KBI is missing persons database. I can cross reference over there and see if it's on their website because it's real time updated. And if it's on there, then it's legitimately reported with law enforcement because when it's law enforcement, it goes right to KBI's website. Just like when they clear one, it comes right off. So it's KPI has become a really valuable resource for me.
Have you interacted with any private investigators?
Not private investigators, no, I haven't. That I can remember. I don't think I have, no.
She said, Ricky, you wasted no time helping me get a flyer created for my missing cousin. Thanks so much for everything.
You're welcome, Nikki. I'm glad we were able to get him found. That's the goal, is to get him found and home safe as quick as possible.
How much interaction do you get on your site? Like, are you getting messages daily or?
Oh yeah, I get messages every day. I'd say the big thing now, though, is, and I've even talked to my daughters about this, is the human trafficking element. Is trying to keep them safe online, and they're just starting to get into Facebook and stuff. And I tell them, be careful who you're talking to, because even though this profile looks like a 15-year-old kid, it could be a 30-year-old guy. You just don't know, because people can portray themselves as whoever they want you to believe they are online.
Yeah, very dangerous.
Yeah, it is. And I know of at least 5 teen girls that I've done flyers for. When they were found, they were being actively trafficked. And this is over the span of the last 8 years. And I'm
Terrible,
sure there's
man.
probably more I haven't heard about, but it's dangerous.
Yeah.
I can't believe these sickos. There was a guy here, it was like 2-3 years ago. There's a guy in Canada communicating with a 12-year-old girl in El Dorado, and he come down from Canada and picked her up and admitted for the sole purpose of just to have sex with her. And by the time they were able to catch up to them and get them, they were up in Michigan already. Fortunately, he hadn't done anything to her, and he's sitting in prison right now. Thank you, Diane. I appreciate that.
Nice. Well, is there anything you want to showcase before we wrap this up? Like, do you have like any posting schedules that you follow, or do you just sort of post whenever you have something available to post?
Yeah, I pretty much post when I have when they're available to post, when I can get them made and posted. So like I said, most time it's generally in the morning before I go to work, and then in the evening when I get home. My schedule varies day to day, so sometimes I can get on earlier, sometimes I'll be up later, but I generally try to get them up and posted as quick as I can, and it's really been more. It's turned out to be more than what I actually had ever expected it to be, and I'm happy with that and proud of that it's turned out to be what it has. When I started it, it was just mainly kind of like what KBI's got going now, just basically a database for the cold case missing, but it's turned into way bigger and a lot more. Like I said, I'm happy with that and proud of that.
How much faith do you have in? And then this isn't a slight towards Kansas law enforcement.
Right.
It's all about resources, availability, and the fact
Yeah.
that they're stacked every day with. They never have a downtime. They always have something they're
Yeah.
investigating. Do you
Right.
have much faith in these cold cases in Kansas?
I try to. I really do. I know, like, it's like the ones we were talking about that are decades old and decades old. I know it's when they've sat cold for so long and they're not getting any tips or information or anything like that. And I know it's hard. I mean, they can only work with what they have, and if they don't have much, there's not much they can really do. I mean, I respect law enforcement for what they do, and putting their lives on the lines every day for us, and God bless them all.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure I'm sure they're really happy that you're doing what you're doing. It's saving them a load of work. How much work is this? How many hours a week do you think you put into this page?
Oh, I'm sure 40 hours or better, probably.
Really? So it's like a full
I'm
time
sure.
job.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's not something I get paid to do. I just do it because I want to do it, and I don't want to be paid for it. My long range goal though is to get it to be a registered 501c3 nonprofit, to where I could eventually, hopefully, maybe take donations to offset like printing costs and internet
Yeah.
costs, and then if I can ever get to a point where if I want to travel around and help look for actively search for missing persons, then I can be have backing to do that. I mean, that's something I've thought about, but it's like really, really long range as far as the active searching goes.
Have you heard of the website Patreon?
Patreon, yeah, I've heard of that. A lot
You
of
ever thought
YouTubers
about
that I
doing
watch.
something like that?
I've thought about it. I've got to look into it. Like I said, I've got to get Kansas Missing and Solved to be a registered 501c3
Yeah.
first before I can do that.
Before
But
you can do all that stuff. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
You'd be surprised, man. Like a lot of people, not to sound too morbid, but it gives them something to do. Like a lot of these people that are on these groups like that you have a lot of, you have a lot of stay at home moms, stay at home dads, people that are
yeah,
disabled that have a lot of time where they can sit on their device or their computer,
yeah,
and that's sort of where they operate. And they do a lot of this work for you by like nobody realizes how like just one share could find somebody. You never
right,
know.
exactly.
That being said,
Yeah,
999 shares could also do nothing. But the fact that
true.
people are doing this grassroots organic thing where they're trying to help people find their loved ones. I think it's a great thing, man. And so you have Kansas Missing and Unsolved. People can go to
Yeah,
that page and like it.
right.
And if you're watching on Bedroom Radio, yeah, you should go to Kansas Missing and Unsolved. Make sure you like the
Yeah.
page and follow updates and share flyers. If you're watching on Kansas Missing and Unsolved, we're live over here on the Bedroom Radio page.
Yeah.
Is there any other pages you want to promote?
I do. We are on Twitter. It's at Kansas Missing on Twitter. And I know we're on Instagram also. Steph Sheets runs that one, so I'm not exactly sure. Just look up Kansas Missing and Unsolved on Instagram. I'll have to get the URL for that one, and I'll post it under the post for this interview when I get it. But yeah, we tried Instagram one other time a few years back, and it didn't go so well, and we kind of let it go. And Steph's picked it back up, and she's really making it go. So
Yeah,
hopefully they'll have a bigger presence on Instagram now.
nice. Well, I appreciate you doing the interview. Best of luck
You're
to your
welcome.
endeavors, and keep giving them hell, man. Bringing these people home.
Yeah, I'm trying. Thank you, Derek. I appreciate it. And thanks for hitting
Yeah,
me up to do this. I appreciate
yeah.
it.
This is really fun.
And any exposure we can get is helpful.
Yeah. Well, I think your inbox will be seeing a lot of me.
Oh,
Because
okay. Good
I got
deal.
a bunch of questions. Your page does way better than mine, and I have a lot of questions. So, but thank you so much. We'll see you soon, and take care. And
Okay.
thanks everybody for stopping by and watching. We'll see you
Yeah,
later.
just one more thing though. I just
Go
want to
ahead.
remind everybody: share the flyers. Everyone that we post, share them, share them, share them. And I appreciate everybody that comments and say, "Hey, this person was found," because a lot of times they find out before I do. Because some of the posts I get are like law enforcement posts saying we have a missing person, and I'll get the flyer made and stuff, and they'll see it on their post before I can get it updated, and they'll let me know. And so I just thank everybody for their feedback and help and everything. I appreciate that too.
Awesome. Well,
I
Ricky,
mean, we're all in this together, man.
yeah, man. Let's bring them home, man. Bring them home.
Yeah,
Find them. Find these people, even if they're runaways. They're
yeah,
unless it's a negative, and that's a whole nother topic and a whole nother show. But
yeah,
at least they need to have somebody knowing where they are.
yeah.
It's a dark, cold world. But good meeting you.
Yeah.
I'll
Yeah,
send
good
you a
meeting you too.
message soon, and
Okay.
we'll continue this blossoming friendship. But thank you so much,
Yeah,
and I'll see you
sure.
soon.
Yeah, if we can reach at least, a couple of these runaways and let them know somebody cares enough to want to see you found and safe, that maybe some of these kids will go, huh, somebody does really care.
Yeah,
That's what
true
I'm hoping
story.
for.
That's all it
That's what I'm
takes.
hoping for.
All right, buddy.
All right. You have
See
a
you
good night,
later.
Derek. All right. Talk to
Later.
you later.
Bye, everybody.